You have one day left, and you don't know it. The bread is still in the oven. A woman counts coins at a shop counter. A slave carries a basket through a doorway still warm from the night. Somewhere a child is being told to hurry. The mountain above is not a warning. It is background, green with vines, its shadow familiar for generations. No one looks up and thinks of extinction. No one imagines that this city's final archive is about to begin. Unfinished meals, locked rooms, abandoned tools, names scratched into walls. Pompeii is not waiting for history, it is waiting for lunch. And that is exactly why its last day is so terrifying. Pompeii wakes in layers. In cramped upper rooms, workers rise and pull on tunics of wool and linen. In wealthy houses, sunlight slides across painted walls, small gardens, pools, and household shrines, while enslaved people begin the day long before their owners enter it. Fires are lit, courtyards swept, water carried. 20,000 people are packed into this dense grid of stone against the Bay of Naples. Pompeii is beautiful, but it is not quiet. It groans, smells, sweats, sells, and prays. It is a city where marble and mud stand a few steps apart. The ruins we walk today feel still, but on this morning the city is moving in every direction at once. Down where the Sarno River meets the sea, the engine of the city comes alive. Sailors from Alexandria, Carthage, and Ostia haul thick ropes, mooring cargo ships heavy with goods from across the Mediterranean. Laborers weave between piles of Spanish amphorae, unloading salted garum, North African wheat, and oil, then loading local wool and the famous regional wine for export. The air is thick with brine, the sharp reek of fermenting fish in the processing vats, and the sweat of men earning their bronze coins. This is a wealthy crossroads, humming with maritime ambition, and utterly oblivious to the countdown beneath its feet. Walk inland and the world narrows. The streets are giant blocks of dark basalt, locked together like a jigsaw and cut deep with parallel ruts from decades of cartwheels. With no sewer below, the road itself is the drain, so you cross on raised stepping stones to keep your tunic clean. Some say small chips of white stone were set into the pavement to catch the moonlight and guide walkers at night. At the food counters, jars sit sunk into marble, serving bread, lentils, olives, wine, garum, pork if you can afford it. You will not see tomatoes, citrus, or maize here. Those belong to later worlds. Hold one image in your mind, a loaf left unfinished, blackened by heat, still shaped like a human morning. The Forum is where Pompeii pretends to be orderly. Columns, temples, statues, and names. Merchants argue, clients wait for patrons, officials cross the square as if the stone belongs to them. Every statue says someone paid. Every inscription says someone wanted to be remembered. But the human story is on the walls. Professional sign writers brush bold red election notices. Ordinary people scratch their own lines beside them. One survives to this day, weary and joking. Wall, I am amazed you have not collapsed in ruins, since you hold up the tedious scribblings of so many writers. 2,000 years later, that wall still stands, and we are still reading it. To understand this world, imagine you are a fuller, a cloth cleaner named Lucius. Your day is spent up to your knees in stone vats, stamping on woolen cloth in a mixture of water and stale urine collected from jars on the public streets, because its ammonia strips the grease from the wool. The stench is suffocating. It stings your eyes and clings to your skin. Yet this is one of the most profitable trades in the empire. The city's elegance depends on it. Someone grinds the grain, someone carries the water, someone cleans the cloth. Pompeii shines on painted walls and polished courtyards precisely because other people are made to scrub. Maybe you are free. Maybe you are owned. Maybe you have stopped dreaming of the difference. Cross town to a bakery on the Via di Nola. Before dawn, the millstones, turned by a blindfolded donkey, ground the grain, and now 30 round loaves sit in the brick oven, each scored into 8 wedges and stamped with the baker's name. In a few hours, that oven will be sealed shut by something the baker has no word for. The loaves will not burn. They will turn to black carbon and wait, perfectly shaped, name still legible, for archaeologists to lift them out 17 centuries later. We have them. You can see the stamp. It is the most ordinary thing in the world, and it survived the end of one. Pompeii knows pleasure intimately. By afternoon, the Stabian baths fill with steam and argument. Beneath the tiled floors, slaves stoke furnaces that drive hot air through hollow walls, the hypocaust. In the hot room you sweat, and a slave scrapes the oil and sweat from your skin with a curved iron strigil. Outside, oiled men wrestle and lift stone weights, while vendors sell figs and spiced wine. Further east stands the amphitheater, the oldest stone arena in the Roman world, seating the whole town for the blood sport they love. But every pleasure here is divided. One person reclines, another serves. One pays, another is owned. For one last day, the city feels permanent, ancient, and completely safe. Above all of it rises Vesuvius, not the broken, split silhouette you know today, but a single tall green cone, terraced with the vineyards that make Pompeii's wine. The people do not fear it. They have no reason to, and no word for what it truly is. The very concept of a volcano does not yet exist in their language. 17 years ago, an earthquake cracked their temples. You can still see the repairs. They simply rebuilt, grander than before, and learned to ignore the tremors that still shake the floor. They see a mountain, a green mountain, a profitable mountain. The deadliest object in their world is hiding behind familiarity. Then, around 1 in the afternoon, the sky grows a new shape. A column rises from the mountain, climbing so high the city has no scale for it. Over 30 kilometers, spreading at the top like the crown of a Mediterranean pine. Across the bay, a young man named Pliny reaches for that exact image. An umbrella pine of cloud, a trunk of ash branching at the sky. Picture standing in the street, a loaf or a basket still in your hands, while the mountain draws a black tree over the world. The first moments of disaster are filled not with screaming, but with interpretation. A storm, a fire, a sign. The mind tries to make the impossible familiar. Anything except the truth. The mountain has opened. The first attack is not lava. That image belongs to myth, not to this disaster. What falls first is pumice. Light, porous volcanic stone, warm, hissing down by the millions. At first it seems survivable. Then it keeps falling. Roof tiles rattle, courtyards fill, the streets grow deeper underfoot by the hour. Inside, people gather what they cannot bear to leave. Keys, coins, jewelry, a household god. But every choice is now dangerous. Stay indoors and the rising weight can cave the roof in. Run outside and the stones strike from above while ash thickens the air. Pompeii becomes a city of impossible choices, and the cost of waiting climbs in silence. By now, the city has divided itself without realizing it. Some leave early, moving toward the gates and the coast. Some hesitate because a house is never just walls. It is savings, inheritance, tools, documents, the memory of a family. And some cannot leave at all. The old, the sick, the enslaved, small children, those trapped by blocked streets and collapsing rooms. Others stay because shelter has protected human beings from storms for as long as anyone can remember. But this is not a storm. The streets that carried gossip at dawn now carry fear. A person may live or die on a decision made in minutes, with no real understanding of what Vesuvius will do next. They were not foolish. They were human and uninformed in the dark. The clearest ancient voice comes not from inside Pompeii, but from across the bay. Pliny the Younger, 17 years old, safe at Misenum, will later write 2 letters to the historian Tacitus, the only eyewitness account of the eruption that survives. His uncle Pliny the Elder, commander of the Roman fleet and the most famous naturalist in Rome, does the opposite of safe. Curiosity draws him, but so does duty. People on the coast need rescue. He launches the ships into the ash and the poisoned air, and at Stabiae, he dies. His nephew lives and hands history its most precious record. But remember, precious is not the same as complete. Pompeii itself leaves no diary, only walls, objects, skeletons, voids, and silence. As the eruption goes on, day loses its authority. The sky darkens until midday feels like a buried room. A blackness Pliny calls denser than any ordinary night, lit only by the lightning inside the cloud. The air turns sharp with sulfur that burns the throat, Ash enters eyes, hair, cups, beds, shrines, and lungs. The ground shakes without pause, and the sea pulls back from the shore, stranding fish on the sand. Families shout through rooms. Neighbors call from courtyards. Some pray to the household gods, and some curse them. People begin to believe the gods themselves are dying, and the world is being rolled up into one final, endless night. And still, the most lethal force has not yet arrived. The end for those who remain comes with terrible speed. In the early hours, the towering column can no longer hold its own weight and collapses. What races down the mountain is not a creeping river of lava, but a pyroclastic surge, a ground-hugging current of scorching gas and ash, moving like a hurricane, its heat estimated near 300 degrees Celsius. The first surges stop at the city wall, and the survivors of the night believe the worst is past. It is not. Before dawn, a surge clears the wall and pours through the streets, and it is over in moments. Too hot, too fast for escape, or for a final word. The intense heat left many bodies drawn tight into the contracted posture that extreme temperature forces on the human form. Vesuvius does not spare the innocent or punish the guilty. It is not moral, it is geological. For centuries, the dead lay hidden, until excavation turned absence into evidence. In the 19th century, Giuseppe Fiorelli noticed that while the bodies had decayed inside the hardened ash, they had left behind perfect hollow cavities, the exact shape of the moment of death. His team poured liquid plaster into the voids, chipped the ash away, and Pompeii gave up its dead. A man shielding his face, a dog still chained and twisted on its back, a family found together, reaching for one another. These are not statues, they are filled absences, impressions made by death and recovered by archaeology. They turn a number into a person, a room into a last room, a doorway into a failed escape. Pompeii's deepest horror is not that it vanished, it is that it vanished so specifically. So strip away the familiar mistakes. Pompeii was not drowned by a slow river of lava. It died by ash, pumice, and surge. The mountain did not have its modern broken profile before the eruption. The blast itself transformed it, and the date the textbooks gave us is not as certain as it sounds. The 24th of August comes only through copies of Pliny's letters, but the ground tells another story. Victims in wool, not summer linen, pomegranates and walnuts, a wine harvest sealed in jars, and a charcoal scrawl on a wall, dated to mid-October. Written after the day the old story says the city was already dead. The evidence now points not to high summer, but to a cold morning in late autumn. The honest version is not weaker for admitting doubt. It is stronger because history is built from evidence, not slogans. Now return to the morning before the mountain opened. The fountain runs, the bakery is warm, the fuller bends over his cloth. A child looks up at a roofline, not a volcano. The tragedy of Pompeii is not only mass death, it is interruption. A city caught mid-sentence, meals unfinished, doors half closed, names still fresh on the walls. That is why it feels less like a distant ruin and more like a warning from ordinary life. Tomorrow is never promised, even when the streets feel permanent. But Pompeii was not the first great city to fall silent. More than 1,000 years before Rome was even founded, on the plains of the Indus, there rose a city of perfect grid streets, brick drains, and running water. So advanced it seems impossible for its age. And then it simply faded, leaving behind a script we still cannot read and a true name we will never know. Next time, we walk into Mohenjo-Daro, the lost metropolis of the Indus. Subscribe and explore it with us.